Hello and welcome to the channel. My name is Clint and today we're very excited flying with Lufthansa in first class from Frankfurt to New York. But with 2 connecting flights, a medical emergency on board and delays on both flights, the question was how much would I manage to experience in the first class lounge in Munich and in the first class terminal in Frankfurt. I started the trip with a flight from Gothenburg to Munich, booked in economy today, but at the gate I was upgraded to business class, to 1C, so unexpectedly got breakfast. In Munich, it was quite some time to get to the first class lounge, which was behind this door. Don't seem much for the world, but inside it's very nice. They greet you. And inside you see white tablecloths. At this hour in the morning, there was only 2-3 other guests. Breakfast was served. But since the flight had been some 20 minutes delayed, plus the long time it took to get me to the lounge, I had maybe 15 minutes before my boarding would start. I at once ordered a cappuccino, got some chocolate to that, had some juice, and just some small light snacks to get the feeling of the service. Throughout the lounge, there is also chocolate that you can help yourself with. I asked to get a duck, and I got this colorful München branded Lufthansa duck. My next flight was in economy, and the lounge was just next by the gate, but that I didn't know until I came out from the lounge. There it was 15 minutes delay while we were on board. It was about 1.5 hour delay because of a medical emergency. So when we landed in Munich, I had a bit more than 1.5 hour before my flight. Here you see, excuse me for the recording, but over the speakers they asked for Mr. Clint that you had a car waiting for you outside because the plane had stopped on a road stand and there was no bus for the other passengers at that point. So you see my car was waiting outside, so I had to squeeze by from row 10. It was a very nice experience. All other guests are still in the plane and you have to squeeze through and go out and sit in this Porsche with a private chauffeur while the others can't even leave the plane. It felt very exclusive, one of the best feelings I've had flying, and especially with the 1.5 hour delay from Frankfurt. I had planned this trip so that I would have enough time in the lounge in Munich to try that service, and that didn't go so well. And then I had also planned to have about 3.5 hours in Frankfurt. And today the only options for this ticket was to have both of these flights in economy while still flying first class the last leg. With the 1.5 hour delay plus the 15 minutes delay before we could board the plane, I had now only about 1.5 hour left. The driver, he asked me if I wanted a ride to the first class lounge, but I said no, I want to go to the first class terminal. So then he had to drop me off as an arriving passenger, so I had to go outside and then walk myself the last distance. So it was a very nice feeling to have this driver, and it was quite a distance that we had to drive. Maybe because of the flight delay, the plane had lost its planned gate, and that's why it had to go to a remote stand. One of the advantages of flying first class with Lufthansa is, in such a case, you're picked up by the driver. It was a very nice experience. I took some photos, and then the driver asked me if he wanted to take the photo of me and the car. That was very nice. I arrived as an arriving passenger, walked outside, turned left, passed by the taxi drivers, and then after some minutes you see this terminal building. You walk up. I guess most people come here by car, chauffeur driven. You see the first class. You go inside and go to this elevator, push the button and go up. There you're greeted by staff that at once come and take your passport and boarding card. They escort you through the security check, and since this is exclusive for the first class terminal, there are very few guests. You're through at once. They also ask you if you want to do it in German or in English. You come straight into the lounge from the security check. There are some magazines, a desk that sometimes is staffed if you have any questions. Otherwise, staff pass throughout the lounge. There's a cigar and whiskey lounge. Further down into the lounge, here you can ask in the reception for a shower. They give you the boarding card in this nice Lufthansa First Class and the champagnes, drinks. I had planned to eat, have a bath and relax, but with about 1.5 hours, I had to go straight into the action and order some lunch. Still, I didn't want to have too much food and still have some time in between before the flight meal. The menu is extensive. A difference in the first class terminal is no white tablecloths. A bit strange, since that gives it a nicer touch than in Munich, where they had it. It was nicer. I started with a tom kha gai soup. Tasted really nice. Had some champagne to that. There's a staffed bar, many drinks on order. You can ask for anything or check in the menu. For main, I had this Uruguay rinder filet. And I didn't want to have the risotto, so I skipped that. And I had 2 desserts and a cappuccino. Also some port wine and more refill of the champagne. If you're in a hurry or for other reasons prefer, you can help yourself with different kinds of food. I took one of the desserts from here and ordered one of the desserts from the a la carte. Different kinds of international dishes, cheeses, desserts, since this was lunch hour. These dishes don't look that first class or appealing, so it's much nicer if you have the time and ability to order from a la carte. After that, I went and asked for a shower room to freshen up a bit after 2 connecting flights. No bath this time, since I had too little time. I knew that in some maybe 10-15 minutes they would come and look for me to take me to my flight. I got a white Lufthansa duck, same as last time. I'd hoped for something new. I also had time to order a berry smash mocktail. You see the lounge. Not too many people. When it's your turn, they find you in the lounge, escort you with the elevator down. You sit here and wait for some minutes. Then they call you up to the gate and take you either by a shared car or your own Porsche. It seemed as 4 people would go to the same plane as me, so I thought, okay, it will be shared this time. But they got their car and I got my Porsche. Very nice. Feels much more exclusive. This is one of the advantages of going from the first class terminal. Here you see drive Porsche, fly Lufthansa on the window. The driver was very polite and very friendly. This is a nice feeling. So arriving in this way, except on the plane, you don't really see that many people. Since I left the plane first, squeezing through the other passengers, I came out as an arriving passenger, walked to the first class terminal. There it was not too many people. And then I come by car to the plane, a Boeing 747. Today I have seat 3A, so a bit ahead of the pilot. I took some time after arriving to the plane to take some photos and movies. We took the elevator up and onto the jet bridge. They are greeted by friendly staff. They take you to the seat, as this is the older first class seat. It doesn't have any wall, but there's much space in the seat, slippers and the amenity kit. And they come around and ask if you want some pajamas and in what size you want it. I had no intention to sleep, but a Lufthansa First Class pajamas, you don't say no. Sitting down, they ask what you want for drink. I took some champagne, water, and some warm nuts. Warm nuts on a plane with champagne. It's very nice. The red rose is a nice touch with Lufthansa. You see me sitting in 3A. I see the passenger next to me quite much. It is 8 seats in first class, and today 7 of these seats were taken. It had been a stressful morning, having 2 delays, the medical emergency. I didn't know if I would make it to Frankfurt. Would I have my flight today? But now I could just relax. The meal service started with an amuse-bouche. You can choose to dine on demand. Some choose to sleep at once, depending on what time zone you come from. But I prefer to eat as usual shortly after takeoff. Caviar and champagne. And then starter. I got some small plates of each of the starters. Then I had soup. Usually I prefer not to eat too much starters, so I prefer to have dessert. But today it ended up for some reason that I had too much starters and soup. Here you see the main. So at the end, the only dessert I could manage was a little bit of ice cream. Doesn't look so first class. I asked the staff to make my bed. I had no intention to sleep, but it's just nice to sit and relax. You get a card with a Wi-Fi code that you can use throughout the flight. And since the screen feels too small and outdated, and it's too far away from you, I didn't use it. The amenity kit is quite boring in this bag with otherwise the usuals, except you also get a comb. Before landing, I had this Spanish platter with some cheese and cold cut meats. And for dessert, I got the mixed berries. But being in first class, this is too little, I would say, since still about an 8-hour flight, even if you have big main, but I get hungry again. So this was too little for me. You can have some snacks, tea during the flight, but in one way it's easier in business class, where you can have crisps and go and get things yourself. In summary, this was a very nice trip with being picked up from the plane, being driven to the plane, the food on board and the food in the lounge, and the first class terminal was high class. The pre-departure meal is too poor to be first class, and the delays and the medical emergency on board that cost me time in the terminal and the first class lounge was not the fault of Lufthansa. So I would gladly fly this again. And if you want to see my video from my previous Lufthansa First Class flight, you see the link to that video right here on the screen now.